Still playing nurse? What's the point? You think she's leaving you something? My brother Mark leaned against the doorframe of Grandma's bedroom, his phone in one hand, smirking. I steadied my shaking hands as I held the spoon of chicken soup to Grandma's lips. Her frail body seemed to shrink further into the pillows with each cruel word. The smell of the homemade soup filled the small room, but Mark's words turned everything sour. Grandma's tired eyes flickered toward him, and I saw something that broke my heart, pain mixed with disappointment. You don't talk to her that way, I whispered, my voice barely holding steady. He laughed, the sound sharp and mocking. Then he raised his phone and snapped a picture of Grandma in her bed. Relax. It's for Facebook. People love a caring grandson post. The spoon clattered against the bowl as my hands trembled. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not in front of him. My name is Lila Trent, and that was the day I learned that loving someone could make people hate you. That evening at dinner, Mark entertained our parents with jokes about Saint Lila and her precious granny. Mom and Dad chuckled awkwardly, probably hoping the tension would pass if they ignored it. She should get a life, Mark said, cutting into his steak. She's turning into a maid instead of finding a real job. I gripped my fork so hard my knuckles turned white. I'm helping her because she helped raise us. Someone has to. Mark's smirk widened. Sure, keep telling yourself that. We all know what you're really after. The implication hung in the air like poison. My parents said nothing. They never did when Mark started his attacks. Grandma excused herself quietly, her hands trembling as she pushed back from the table. I watched her walk slowly toward her room, shoulders hunched, and felt my chest tighten with rage and grief. Later, I knocked on her door and found her sitting by the window, staring at the darkening sky. I'm sorry about Mark, I whispered. She patted my hand. Don't apologize for someone else's choices, dear. I remembered summers at Grandma's house when Mark and I were children. The backyard had a wooden swing that hung from the old oak tree. Grandma would push us for hours while she hummed old songs. The smell of her apple pie would drift through the open windows, calling us inside for warm slices with vanilla ice cream. She told us stories by lamplight about her own childhood, about resilience and kindness, about choosing love over bitterness. I absorbed every word like a sponge. Mark never stayed long. Even then, he was always too busy with friends or games or excuses. He'd show up for the pie, snap a quick photo with Grandma, then disappear again. One summer evening, Grandma said something I never forgot. We sat on the porch steps watching fireflies dance in the twilight. One day, people show who they are when there's nothing left to take from you, she said softly. I didn't understand then. I was only 12. But I understood now. Late one night, I heard quiet sobbing from Grandma's room. I found her sitting on the edge of her bed, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. Her hands clutched a framed photo of Mark as a baby. He used to sit by me, she whispered when she noticed me. Now he only visits with his phone in his hand. He doesn't see me anymore. My throat tightened. I see you, Grandma. I'm here. She reached for my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. Then you'll never be alone, sweet girl. And neither will I. We sat together in comfortable silence until her breathing steadied. I helped her back under the covers and stayed until she fell asleep. Walking back to my room, I passed Mark's childhood photos on the hallway wall. In every picture, Grandma stood beside him, smiling proudly. I wondered when exactly he'd stopped seeing her as a person and started seeing her as a prop for social media sympathy. The answer, I realized, probably didn't matter anymore. Mark canceled his Saturday visit with a text, "Can't make it. My colleague's birthday party, can't skip it." I showed Grandma the message. Her face fell, the disappointment carving deeper lines around her mouth. That's the third birthday this month, she said quietly. I forced a bright smile. He'll come next week, I'm sure. But we both knew better. The pattern had become predictable. Mark would make promises, cancel at the last minute, then show up unannounced when it suited him, usually when he needed something or wanted to maintain his devoted grandson image. Grandma touched my cheek. You don't have to lie for him, dear. I know what I mean to him now. That truth hurt more than any of Mark's cruel jokes. It was one thing to suspect you weren't important to someone. It was another to have it confirmed in cancelled visits and empty promises. Later, I made Grandma her favorite tea and we watched old movies together. She fell asleep halfway through, her head resting on my shoulder. I didn't move, even when my arm went numb. 3 weeks later, Grandma fainted while watering her roses. I was inside making lunch when I heard the dull thud. My heart stopped as I rushed outside and found her crumpled on the garden path, the watering can spilled beside her. The ambulance ride felt endless. I clutched her cold hand, whispering prayers and promises I wasn't sure I could keep. Stay with me, Grandma. Please stay. Her eyes fluttered open briefly. My garden, she murmured. Who'll care for my roses? I will, I promised. I'll take care of everything. Mark arrived at the hospital 4 hours later, carrying a bouquet of supermarket flowers and his ever-present phone. He barely glanced at Grandma before positioning himself beside her bed. Smile, Granny. Let's get a photo for the family group chat. Grandma turned her face away. No pictures today, dear, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I wanted to scream at him. Instead, I stepped between him and the bed. She needs rest, not a photo shoot. His smile disappeared. Fine. Whatever. Back at Grandma's house that evening, I confronted Mark in the kitchen. My patience had finally snapped. Stop using her for likes and sympathy. She's a person, not content for your social media. Mark's expression shifted from surprise to contempt. You think you're better than me because you change her bedpans and cook her meals? Is that it? My voice cracked. I think she deserves respect. She raised us when Mom and Dad worked. She loved us when we had nothing. He leaned close, his voice dropping to a cruel whisper. Respect doesn't pay bills, Lila. Wake up. This martyr act is getting old. Then why do you keep showing up? I demanded. If you don't care, why pretend? His jaw tightened. For a moment, I thought he might actually answer honestly. Instead, he grabbed his jacket and walked out, slamming the door behind him. I stood in the empty kitchen, shaking with rage and grief, and wondered how we'd become such strangers. One quiet evening, Grandma called me into her room. She pulled a cream-colored envelope from her nightstand drawer. The paper felt expensive, heavy. My name was written across it in her careful handwriting. Don't open it yet, she said firmly. Not until I'm gone. Promise me, Lila. My throat closed up. Don't talk like that. You're going to be fine. She squeezed my hand. We both know better, dear. Promise me you'll wait. Tears blurred my vision. I promise. Good. She smiled faintly, settling back against her pillows. Because it'll make everything right. Everything I couldn't fix while I'm here, this will fix it. I tucked the envelope into my dresser drawer that night, beneath old sweaters and forgotten scarves. Its presence felt heavy, like a secret I wasn't ready to carry. The next morning, Grandma seemed brighter. We had breakfast together in the garden, surrounded by her blooming roses. She told me stories about her own grandmother, about legacy and love. I didn't know those would be some of our last peaceful moments together. At a family barbecue 2 weeks later, Mark stood up to make a toast. Everyone gathered around, drinks in hand, expecting something heartfelt. To my sister, he announced with a wide grin, living proof that unpaid labor is still alive and well in America. Laughter erupted around the yard. Even some of my aunts and uncles chuckled, though they looked uncomfortable. My face burned with humiliation as I set down my plate and headed for the kitchen. I hid behind the refrigerator door, pretending to search for something while tears streamed down my cheeks. Through the window, I saw Grandma watching from her chair on the patio. Her lips were pressed into a thin line, her eyes hard with something I'd never seen before. Disappointment? No. It was deeper than that. It was finality. Like she'd made a decision she could never unmake. Later, she found me in the kitchen. Don't let him steal your joy, sweetheart. His words say more about him than they ever will about you. But the damage was done. The whole family had laughed. For weeks later, Grandma collapsed in her beloved rose garden. I was inside folding laundry when I heard the crash of her garden tools hitting the stone path. My scream for help echoed through the empty house. Mark was on vacation. Somewhere tropical, judging by his latest Facebook posts. I called him anyway as the ambulance wailed closer. Grandma's collapsed. You need to come home. His voice was casual, annoyed. I'm literally at the airport for my return flight tomorrow. Can't she hang on one more day? I hung up on him. As paramedics loaded Grandma onto a stretcher, she clutched my hand with surprising strength. Her eyes found mine, clear despite the pain. Promise me you'll keep the house warm, she whispered. Don't let the garden die. I promise, I said, my voice breaking. I promise everything. Her grip loosened as they lifted her into the ambulance. I rode beside her, holding her cold hand, watching her chest rise and fall with labored breaths. She never made it home again. The hospital lights hummed their awful fluorescent song. I sat beside the empty bed, still warm where Grandma had lain. Just hours before. The machines were silent now. The monitors dark. She'd passed at 3:47 a.m. I'd been holding her hand, whispering about her roses, about the garden, about love. Her last breath had been soft, almost peaceful. Then nothing. Mark walked in at 6, holding a coffee cup from the hospital cafeteria. His hair was messy, his shirt wrinkled. He looked around the empty room. So, she's gone? I couldn't speak. I just nodded. He sipped his coffee. Well. We tried, right? You can't win them all. Something inside me shattered. Not broke, shattered. Like glass hitting concrete, too many pieces to ever put back together. Get out, I whispered. He raised his eyebrows. Excuse me? Get out. I screamed. Get out before I say something we both regret. He left, muttering about hormones and grief, leaving me alone with the ghost of the woman who'd loved us both. The funeral was everything Grandma would have hated, crowded, performative, false. Mark cried the loudest. He made a speech about how incredibly close they were and the special bond they shared. People applauded. Some even cried. I stood in the back, my body rigid with fury, unable to find words. The pendant Grandma had given me, her mother's pendant, burned warm against my chest. I touched it through my black dress, drawing strength from its weight. After the service, distant relatives I barely recognized approached me with sympathy. You were such a good granddaughter, they said. She was so lucky to have you. But their eyes asked the real question, what did she leave you? I said nothing. I just kept touching the pendant, remembering Grandma's words, let time do the talking. Mark held court by the reception table, accepting condolences like a bereaved celebrity. His performance was flawless. I wanted to scream the truth at everyone, but Grandma's training held firm. Dignity in silence. Truth in time. After most guests had left, Mark cornered me near the parking lot. His tie was loosened, his earlier tears completely dry. So you're done now, right? He said casually. You can finally get a real job, move on with your life. I stared at him. I gave up everything to take care of her. My career, my relationships, my future. He cut me off with a laugh. Bad investment, sis. Should have thought of that before playing Florence Nightingale. She was our grandmother, I said, my voice shaking. She loved us. She raised us. And now she's gone, he replied, shrugging. Life moves on. You should too. He walked away before I could respond, leaving me standing alone in the funeral home parking lot as the sun set. Cars pulled away one by one until only mine remained. I sat in the driver's seat for 20 minutes, unable to start the engine, replaying his words. Bad investment. As if love could be calculated in returns and profits. That night, I couldn't sleep in my apartment. I drove to Grandma's house instead. I was sorting through Grandma's papers when my cousin Angela called. Did you know Grandma updated her will last year? She asked. I heard my mom mention it at the funeral. My heart skipped. She did? Yeah. She went to some fancy lawyer in the city. Very secretive about it. After we hung up, I sat on Grandma's bed, surrounded by her things. She'd never mentioned updating her will. Then again, she'd been secretive about many things those last few months, the sealed envelope, the whispered conversations with her lawyer, the way she'd smile mysteriously when I asked about her plans. Meanwhile, Mark had overheard the same rumor. He texted me that evening, heard about the will. I'm sure she left you some old teacups and guilt. Congrats. But I remembered his eyes at the funeral, constantly scanning, calculating. He wasn't as confident as he pretended. Neither of us knew what was coming. But Grandma had planned everything perfectly, as always. Every detail, every consequence, every lesson. We'd both learn soon enough. The lawyer, Mr. Denham, called on Tuesday morning. His voice was professionally neutral. I'm executing your grandmother's estate. Both you and your brother need to attend the reading this Friday at 2 o'clock. Mark showed up 15 minutes late, wearing an expensive suit I'd never seen before. He dropped into the chair beside me with a dramatic sigh. Let's make this quick, he said to Mr. Denham. I have a meeting at 4. Mr. Denham adjusted his glasses. This won't take long. The office smelled like old books and furniture polish. Legal certificates lined the walls. Everything felt official, final, real. Mark leaned back in his chair, looking bored. I already know what it says. Grandma talked to me about it last year. He was lying. I could tell from the way his knee bounced nervously, from how his eyes kept darting to the sealed documents on Mr. Denham's desk. Mr. Denham opened the folder without comment. The silence felt heavy, expectant. I touched Grandma's pendant beneath my shirt. Whatever came next, she'd planned it. I trusted her. Mr. Denham cleared his throat and began reading in a steady, formal voice. To my granddaughter Lila, who gave me love without expectation, who sacrificed her own future to ensure my comfort, who saw me as a person when others saw me as a burden. Mark snorted loudly. Here we go. Mr. Denham continued without pause. I leave my home at 428, Maple Drive, including all contents. I leave my savings accounts, totaling $340,000. I leave my investment portfolio, currently valued at $180,000. And I leave the contents of my private chest, to be opened at her discretion. The silence that followed was deafening. My ears rang. I couldn't breathe. The numbers didn't make sense. Grandma had lived so modestly. Where had this money come from? Mark's face drained of all color. His mouth opened and closed like a fish. This is a joke, he finally managed. Mr. Denham's expression didn't change. The will is notarized, witnessed by 3 independent parties, and has been reviewed for legal soundness. There is no contest. You can't be serious. Mark shouted. Mark slammed both hands on Mr. Denham's desk, making the lamp shake. This is a joke. She was manipulated. Lila poisoned her mind against me. Mr. Denham remained calm. Your grandmother was of sound mind when she executed this will. I personally verified her mental competence. She understood completely what she was doing. Mark spun toward me, his face twisted with rage. You manipulated her. You played the victim, made her feel guilty, turned her against her own grandson. I found my voice, though it came out barely above a whisper. I just loved her, Mark. That's all I ever did. Liar, he screamed. You calculated this from the beginning. You saw a lonely old woman and… That's enough, Mr. Denham interrupted firmly. I won't have accusations in my office. The will is legal and final. Mark grabbed his jacket. This isn't over. I'll contest it. I'll get lawyers. You'll regret this. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the framed certificates rattled on the walls. I sat frozen, trembling, unable to process what had just happened. Mr. Denham pulled out another item, an ornate wooden chest, about the size of a shoebox. She wanted you to have this, Mr. Denham said, sliding the chest across his desk. She said to open it when you're ready. There's no rush. The chest was beautiful, dark wood carved with roses. A small brass keyhole gleamed in the afternoon light. Mr. Denham handed me an antique key on a ribbon. Take your time with everything, he said kindly. This is overwhelming, I know. But your grandmother was very clear about her wishes. She wanted you to know you earned this through love, not manipulation. I carried the chest to my car in a daze. The afternoon sun felt too bright. Everything felt surreal, like I was watching my life from outside my body. In the parking lot, I sat in the driver's seat holding the chest. My fingers traced the carved roses. I could open it right now. Find out what Grandma wanted me to know. But something stopped me. Her voice in my memory, when you're ready. I wasn't ready. Not yet. I drove to Grandma's house, my house now, and placed the chest on her bedroom dresser. It could wait. Some answers needed the right moment. Mark's smear campaign started within hours. By evening, my phone exploded with messages from relatives. Did you really take advantage of Grandma? Mark says you manipulated her. Is that true? How could you turn her against her own grandson? I didn't respond to any of them. Grandma had taught me that lesson well, let time do the talking. But it hurt. Every message felt like a knife. People who'd watched me care for Grandma, who'd seen my sacrifice, now questioned my motives because Mark was louder, more convincing, more skilled at playing the victim. Mark posted on Facebook about family betrayal and elder manipulation. He didn't mention names, but everyone knew. The comments flooded in with sympathy for him. I closed my laptop and walked into Grandma's garden. Her roses were beginning to wilt without her care. I spent the evening watering them, pulling weeds, talking to her like she could still hear me. You knew this would happen, I whispered to the twilight. You knew he'd react this way. So what's in the chest, Grandma? What's the rest of your plan? The roses rustled in the breeze, but gave no answers. 3 days later, I finally opened the chest. Inside, I found letters, dozens of them, written in Grandma's careful handwriting. Letters to me about her life, her values, her love. Photographs of us together through the years. Recipes on yellowed cards. Small treasures from her childhood. And at the bottom a sealed envelope addressed, "For my grandson, when he's ready." My breath caught. She'd left something for Mark after all. Beneath it was a note to me, "Give this to him through Mr. Denham. He needs to receive it properly, officially. It's the last lesson I can teach him." The next morning, I drove to Mr. Denham's office and handed him the envelope. She wanted Mark to have this. She said he needs it. Mr. Denham studied the envelope, then nodded. I'll contact him today. What do you think it says? I asked. He smiled sadly. With your grandmother? Probably exactly what he needs to hear, whether he wants to or not. 2 hours later, Mark called me screaming. What kind of sick game is this? Then he hung up. I never called back. Mr. Denham later told me what happened when Mark came to his office. Mark had arrived cocky, assuming Grandma had left him money after all. Finally, he'd said. I knew she wouldn't forget me. Mr. Denham handed him the envelope. Mark tore it open eagerly, his smile confident. Then his expression changed as he read. The color drained from his face. His hands began shaking. She hated me, he whispered. Mr. Denham, who'd read the letter beforehand at Grandma's request, said quietly, no. She loved you enough to teach you. The letter read. My dear boy, you measured love in money and inheritance. I measured it in time and presence. You visited me with your phone instead of your heart. You performed grief instead of feeling it. That's why I could never give you what you didn't give me, yourself. But I hope someday you understand that wealth isn't counted in dollars. It's counted in moments. In soup spooned to trembling lips. In roses watered. In hands held during the darkness. Your sister understood this. I pray you will too, before it's too late. Attached was a check for $1. News of the letter spread faster than Mark's smear campaign. Suddenly, his Facebook posts about family betrayal took on new meaning. People began asking questions. His business partners, who'd valued his devoted family man image, started distancing themselves. A major deal fell through when his partner said, I can't trust someone who abandons their grandmother. Meanwhile, local news picked up my story, not because I sought attention, but because I'd quietly donated $50,000 from the inheritance to the hospice that had helped Grandma in her final weeks. The headline read, Devoted Granddaughter Honors Legacy with Generous Donation. The reporter interviewed me in Grandma's garden. I showed her the roses, told her about Grandma's kindness, her wisdom, her love. What about your brother's claims? The reporter asked. I thought carefully before answering. Grandma taught me that actions speak louder than accusations. I'll let our actions speak for themselves. The article went viral locally. Suddenly, Mark's narrative crumbled. People remembered seeing him at the hospital with his phone out, remembered his Facebook posts, remembered his absences. Truth, as Grandma promised, did its own talking. 6 months passed. I'd transformed Grandma's house into exactly what she'd dreamed, warm, welcoming, alive. Her roses bloomed again. I'd started a small foundation in her name, helping caregivers with respite support and resources. Then one Saturday morning, someone knocked on my door. Mark stood on the porch, thinner than I remembered, his expensive clothes replaced with jeans and a simple shirt. His eyes were red-rimmed. He looked broken. Can I come in? His voice cracked. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to slam the door. But I remembered Grandma's last letter to me, the one I'd read alone, if he ever comes back humbled, remember that everyone deserves a chance to grow. But growth requires truth, not forgiveness without acknowledgement. I opened the door wider. We can talk in the garden. We sat on the bench where Grandma used to rest after watering her roses. Mark stared at his hands. I was wrong, he finally said. About everything. She tried to teach me, and I didn't listen. My business collapsed, Mark continued, his voice hollow. Turns out, when you build your reputation on being a good family man and everyone learns you abandoned your dying grandmother for vacation photos, people stop trusting you. I said nothing. Just listened. I read her letter 100 times, he said. Every word cut deeper. She was right. I measured everything wrong. I saw her as content for my life, not as a person I loved. Tears ran down his face. I miss her. But I didn't miss her then, when it mattered. I miss the idea of her now. That's different, isn't it? Yes, I said softly. It is. He looked up at me. Can you forgive me? For what I said, for how I treated you? I thought about forgiveness, about what Grandma would want. I can forgive you, Mark. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. You can't get back the time you lost with her. That's gone forever. He nodded, wiping his eyes. I know. I wanted you to know I finally understand. She saw something in you that I didn't. She saw love, I said. You still can, if you try. But not for what it gives you. Just for what it is. A year after Grandma's passing, I hosted a small gathering in her garden. 20 caregivers came, people supported by the foundation I'd created in her honor. They shared stories of their own struggles, their own sacrifices. I stood in front of Grandma's roses, now thriving again, and read her final note aloud, the one meant for this moment. To my dear Lila, thank you for giving me peace when I needed it most. Thank you for seeing me as a person, not a burden. Thank you for showing me that true love still exists in this world. And to Mark, may he find what he's looking for. Not in money or recognition, but in the quiet moments of caring for someone without expecting anything in return. That's where real wealth lives. I looked up at the blue sky, at the clouds drifting past. You were right, Grandma, I whispered. Some lessons come late. But they still come. Mark came to the gathering. He didn't take photos. He just helped serve food, talked quietly with the caregivers, listened to their stories. When he left, he hugged me. Thank you, he said. For not giving up on me completely. Grandma didn't give up, I replied. She just knew you needed to find your own way. As the sun set over the garden, I touched the pendant at my throat and smiled. This wasn't a revenge story. It was something better. It was a story about love teaching its final lesson, one that echoed through time, carried on the scent of roses and the weight of truth. Some inheritances can't be counted in money. They're measured in transformation. And that, I realized, was Grandma's greatest gift of all.